Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up today, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am thrilled to present two guys who are longtime friends, who are both successful music industry entrepreneurs with multiple exits to their names, and also the perfect example to what I try to strive for every time out, and that is really smart people doing really cool work. I promise you will leave today smarter and more inspired than you arrived. More on that in a moment. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. The second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this webinar series, I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please feel free to introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your buddies, and make some new ones. And please ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brewworks, Project Music, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. Today, we welcome two rock stars. The first is John Cohen. He is the co-founder and CEO of The Fader Incorporated, co-CEO of Cornerstone Agency, and co-founder and CEO of Fader Label, and co-founder of Fader Films. As the visionary behind award-winning creative agency Cornerstone and global media company, The Fader, John plays an integral role in the careers of many artists and is recognized in the industry as a pioneer in publishing and marketing. His work extends to some of the most iconic brands worldwide, including AB InBev, Sonos, Major League Soccer, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Apple, Google, YouTube, Converse, and Diageo, to name a few. Now an award-winning global cross-platform giant in video, print, digital, podcasting, social media, events, film, and video, The Fader has been hailed as the music and fashion Bible by the New York Times and championed by the likes of NPR, Fortune, The Atlantic, BBC, Newsweek, Fast Company, and Billboard, and others. Welcome, John. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having us.
And joining John is Will Griggs. Will's an entertainment executive with over 15 years of experience as an entrepreneur and advisor across music and tech. He was co-founder of Cantora, which is known for developing internationally recognized artists such as MGMT and investing in startups through what Time called a music cultural cool tech fund that doesn't lack ambition. Most recently, Will was CXO of Hi-Fi, which was acquired by Tidal's parent company, Block Incorporated, in October of 2023, where he now leads partnerships for the company's financial service initiatives across the music industry. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of Will's bio, which you're going to learn more about in a moment. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Please take it away, boys.
Excellent. Thanks for having us, Tom. So, Will, it's a pleasure to be doing this with you. We have really an amazing history together, and not only is it great to have you as a friend, but our work history is amazing. Why don't we start there? Tell everybody, give everybody your background. Like, where did you start?
Yeah, sure. I would be so happy to go first. But yes, and thank you, Tom. We really appreciate this platform and the opportunity to have this conversation. And in sort of the lead up to this chat, I'm lucky enough to get to catch up with John on a pretty regular basis, and we're always talking about what's new, what's exciting, what's coming up. And this is a really great opportunity that's very rare to be able to go back and talk about what's happened in the past and how it connects to the things that we're working on now. So, my background, as Tom mentioned, really began as an entrepreneur, co-founder of Cantora. record label, working, with artists, developing artists, helping them turn their ideas and their passion for music into careers. And along the way, through Cantora, we were among the first companies that I'm aware of to do strategic investing in tech startups. We were doing everything from connecting entrepreneurs to artists and their teams, producing festivals and events that we could leverage to create real world case studies for different technologies and different technologies to take that case study, maybe go help raise money against it, product market fit, all those things. And along the way, really focused on live events as well. Lucky enough to collaborate with Pete Shapiro on the launch of Brooklyn Bowl in Williamsburg, more recently collaborating with Ian Schrager's team at the Public Hotel, and connected with Damian Manning, the CEO and founder of Hi-Fi, a little over 5 years ago, in order to build financial technologies to allow artists and their teams to understand not just how much money they were making, where it was coming from, but most importantly, how their strategic decisions impacted their bottom line. And that led to the recent acquisition of Hi-Fi by Block, which also owns Square, Cash App, Tidal, and will continue to be working every day towards making the financial side of the music industry work better for artists. But one reason I was so excited to join John in this conversation is that he really gave me an early break in the industry as I was in that in-between liminal space, building a business, not sure if I could survive in New York City. Just from sort of my work as an entrepreneur, John opened a door to work with his digital marketing team at Cornerstone, where I got to work on Neil Young records and TV on the Radio albums, and got to work alongside a great team to help launch Green Label Sound, which is a singles label that was powered by the soda giant Mountain Dew, and in a lot of ways got a peek into the future of how brands and culture were going to collide. So really looking forward to digging into all of that, but just had to mention that piece of, or that chapter of the story as well, because it was critical and one that I am forever grateful for. But I think that's as good a segue as we're going to get, John, to some of your experience and your story up to this point.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was great for Will and I to have that background together, and obviously we'll dig into that as the conversation goes. I started in the music industry. I started in the traditional major label world. My first jobs were really as a college rep at Syracuse University, and working my way up from the time I was about 18, 19 years old as a freshman there, and eventually working full-time for SBK Records. SBK Publishing is now known as Sony ATV. It was the combination of some of the biggest catalogs in the world. And then SBK would go on to merge with EMI, and I spent 6 years there in various marketing and promotion positions, working in the field, living in Boston at a time, and really, just learning how to break artists. That was really the focus. The company back then was run by Daniel Glass, who was a great mentor. And then I went from there to Columbia Records, and Columbia was at the time the biggest label, in the industry. We had a mix of incredible superstars like Springsteen, Mariah Carey, Aerosmith. I was the head of alternative promotion and marketing. And then in 1996, as my contract was expiring, I partnered with, my best friend since 7th grade, Rob Stone, and I joined him as he was leaving Arista Records to partner with him to start Cornerstone, initially, which was a music marketing company. Cornerstone's intention in the early days when Rob and I joined forces was to do exactly what we were doing for the labels. Our role was to help break artists. And this was 28 years ago. And, we had no idea it would evolve to what it's become today, but we basically transformed Cornerstone into a full service ad agency that focuses on marrying brands to culture, especially music. Music marketing, which Will was a big part of when he was working with us, is a big part of our DNA. But we were able to parlay that expertise to teach brands on how to better engage with their target consumers by using music. And then in 1999, we started the Fader. We really had access to so much in music and culture. Everything was coming our way. We were being asked to go in the studio with Outkast or Beck and getting to hear music pretty much before anyone else. You know, managers were calling us directly because they wanted our opinion, they wanted our view on how to go about launching it. And Rob and I decided to set up a way to document that. And the initial idea of Fader was to create something that can reach the right gatekeepers in the music industry, particularly DJs, to turn them on to new music. And we had no clue what we were doing in the publishing world. And we slowly but surely learned the ropes. We built this great print magazine on very heavy paper stock. Everybody in the world told us we were nuts and we were crazy. We were spending too much money. We didn't know what we were doing. But every photographer came out of the woodwork and they wanted to shoot for us. And our relationships on the Cornerstone side enabled us to get people to give us shots. And, you know, the second issue of Fader was Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine at a time when Rage literally was the biggest band in the world. And then we were able to get Run from Run DMC and Premier from Gangstar, and we called the cover Three Kings. And that cover got people's attention, and that led to getting this unknown artist Eminem on the cover, and then getting Beck to pair with D'Angelo. So Fader went on over the course of these last almost 25 years now to become a really big music media platform. You know, it evolved from a print magazine to a whole host of businesses, a great website that continues to do some really good storytelling, a festival called Fader Fort, a film and TV division, a record label. So we'll get into all of that, but that's in a nutshell the way my career has evolved. And you know, one of the things that's been amazing about careers and being the old guy in the room today is I've had a front row seat to watch so many great young careers, and Will's one of them. You know, I knew Will when he first started with us. I knew he was special because he had this entrepreneurial spirit that even though he was coming in-house to learn, he was willing to take a job and come and learn. And I just always saw that in him, that as he approached his work with us, I knew he was going to leave and go back to being an entrepreneur. So Will, to kick it off, to start the conversation, where did it all start? Like, what was your first concert? Like, what got you engaged in music, and what was that passion that made you want to pursue what we're talking about today?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. And, you know, for me, so much of the beginning of my start in the industry really is rooted in live music and concerts. And it's something that, you know, I really encourage a lot of folks who are looking to explore the music industry to get to know that corner of the market. Because, you know, for me, I was looking for the sort of the lowest rung of the ladder to just get involved. And I grew up outside DC in Arlington, Virginia. And the ethos of DC was, and in some ways still is, this like very Discord, Ian MacKaye, like all ages, keep it cheap, pool resources. And I think that spirit, you know, being able to see like Fugazi at Fort Reno for free, shout out Arlington, I see you, Zach, really inspired not just me, but a lot of my friends to put together concerts. And we weren't the first teenage kids to do this, but, you know, to put on concerts in our own basements, or an ice cream parlor, or, you know, middle school's cafeteria. And that was really the first time that I understood, like, not just how to bring people together where, you know, you can pool resources and do something bigger as a team, but also some of the political stuff of, oh, like, that band brought the PA, so they get to play in a nice spot. This band only has 5 songs. You guys are playing first, whatever it might be. And when I came to New York and started Cantora, that live element of what we did in terms of being able to put on showcases was a really powerful way, not only to collaborate with the artists that we were trying to sign, but also, you know, collaborating with other, whether it was a magazine we wanted to get featured in or another promoter. We used to throw parties with Pop Gun Presents, who now years and years later, you know, own Elsewhere and did Glasslands and everything else in between. You know, we all were getting our starts of just figuring out, how do you get from Tuesday night at the Delancey to Friday night, you know, at the Mercury Lounge. That was the path for success for us at that point. And in terms of that first concert, you know, and my first concert ever was the WHFS Holiday Nutcracker, where every band played like 3 songs. I'm looking at the lineup here, which is in no particular order: Dave Matthews Band, Garbage, Jewel, who I remember was playing between sets, Oasis, Porno for Pyros, the Goo Goo Dolls, and Toadies. And out of all those bands, I left with a Goo Goo Dolls t-shirt. But seeing Oasis play, it was 95, so they were like touring on and promoting, and I'm sure scratching the radio promoters' backs a little bit by doing this show. We're playing all the songs off of Morning Glory, and just hearing a whole stadium of people singing Wonderwall was like a moment where it all clicked. It was like, okay, I can devote my life to trying to conjure this energy. But I know that, through obviously Fader Fort and so many other things, that, not just within Fader, but even like with the Sweet Green guys and others, that you have used live experiences, live concerts as a way to build relationships with artists, build relationships with brands. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to put that sort of ingredient into the pot, and how that's evolved over time?
Yeah, first of all, I was at that HFS show, and Mike Fink, who's on here with us, was there. He was working at HFS at the time, and that was an amazing show. I have pictures I will send you after this.
Send them. I was up close. Maybe we can play Where's Waldo.
So yeah, live. I mean, this is a great topic to kick everything off, because I think as you think of music, whether you're an artist, or you are a brand, or you're running a record company, I think the thing that is constant, technology will change, streaming will change, there'll be so many things. But if you look at the most successful acts in the world, the acts that have had careers, whether it's Taylor Swift, Times Person of the Year, or Radiohead, or anyone, who's been able to sustain careers, the real difference and the differentiator are those acts that can use their live show to build a really loyal and rabid fan base. And to your point earlier, to go from that small little room in one city to the Mercury Lounge in New York City to, playing Radio City one day, that's one fundamental thing that's never going to change in our business. People can have TikTok hits. There's different drivers to have some short-term success. But the fundamental thing, in my opinion, whether it's in music or even around building an actual brand, it is creating that live experience where people that have passion for a certain thing are in a room together sharing it. And what's amazing about live music is all the walls come down. We live in this really horrible, messed up world right now. And the beauty of live music is you go to a concert, you're in that room with people from 20 different walks of life, other, incredible, diverse backgrounds, different ages, different political beliefs. But when they all sing, Wonderwall or whatever song they are in that moment, all the walls of their differences come down. And I think that's the power of live music. And I think one of the big strengths of what we've built, and the reason why I've been around so long as a company, is we've always tried to add a component, whether it's through Fader or our projects at Cornerstone for Converse or our partnership with Sweet Green, to really use live music as a way to do that storytelling, to give that brand experience. On the label and management side, every single act that we work with, one of the fundamental missions is to turn that act into a touring, monster. Whether it be Del Watergap or Claro, our most successful acts have done it by grinding it out on the road. So my first concert, to date myself, to show how much older than I am of you, Will, I was 9 years old. My dad took me to the Kinks at Nassau Coliseum, and the Kinks, at the time were probably one of the bigger British bands coming to the US. And it just changed my life. And from there, just to see so many of my heroes live, it's what really inspired me to want to be a part of music. And then over the years, we built some incredible properties. You brought up Sweet Green. We are, Rob and I are early day one investors in Sweet Green. We served on their board for quite a lot of time, and we were instrumental in helping them shape the way they launched and marketed the Sweet Green brand at a time when they had 3 stores in the DC area. And we partnered with them to start the Sweet Life Festival. And the idea was, how do we do something to put a stake in the ground in DC to show their consumers that they understand their lifestyle? Not only can they serve amazingly healthy and great food, but they can also really bring people together with their interest to tell stories about their mission. So we started the Sweet Life Festival for 7 years. We sold about 25 to 30,000 tickets a year. We had acts like Lana Del Rey, the
Kendrick
Strokes,
Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar headline,
There's
Calvin Harris. Yeah, and we built this
wow.
incredible property, and it was a way for them to really speak to their customers. We started now it's almost 20 years ago. We started Fader Fort, and Fader Fort was our way to allow the pages of our magazine and our website and all the content we're doing come to life. And Fader Fort is a very intimate festival that we started in Austin and New York City. And the idea was it was free, where we would want to put together a lineup that can, compete with the level of a Coachella, but in a venue that was so small and intimate, and allow artists to have the flexibility to do things differently, sometimes collaborate with other artists. And we started this platform, and it just grew into something insane. And over the years, we had Drake as a headliner, we had Amy Winehouse perform, we had 1975, we had Odd Future in their very early days. I mean, we really have a legacy of acts that for a lot of people, they got to see those acts for the first time at Fader Fort. So live, I think, is such an important thing for everyone to consider, no matter what discipline all you guys are in. It is something that people take for granted, that a lot of artists and labels and managers just sometimes in this day and age don't have the resources. And, I think, Will, thinking back to your Cantora days, and thinking about to your whole career, in the early days, there are so many other ways to tour or fund touring. And now from my perspective, I see how hard it is. What would be your advice in this climate if you were starting a label, or if you were a new act, or shout out to Josh Dare, who's here with us, a great young artist out of Colorado. Like, what would you tell Josh, who's starting out, who can't put together a national tour, who doesn't have the resources or funding, but it's a necessary evil for someone like that to get out on the road, because he's killing it on TikTok. He's doing what he can with the resources he has. But the reality is, in order for him to break, or any artist to break, you got to get on the road. So what would you suggest, in today's world, and what are the steps that artists and people can take?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And it's sort of counterintuitive because we have more data at our fingertips every single day about your listeners, where they are, and you're getting different information from different places. You could go and look at different DSPs, you could look at your impressions on social media. But the connection between the conversion of that data and bodies showing up in a room is this almost ephemeral thing that is very difficult to pin down, and especially, as we were coming out of the sort of harder lockdown period of the pandemic. And, I'm close with a lot of the folks that Bowery Presents, for instance, who I worked with at Brooklyn Bowl way back when. And I'm asking them, like, how are you guys dealing with these artists that have had this hockey stick of growth through the pandemic on social media, who maybe never played a show before, but you think that maybe they could sell out Webster Hall? And, I think that artists need to be patient, and they need to actually sort of check those, any sort of assumptions they have about those audiences in whatever controlled ways they can, whether it's starting with smaller bites of the apple, smaller shows than maybe you'd like to. Sell out that first one, leave some money on the table, and come back around, because we all know that if the first show is a flop, it doesn't necessarily poison the well forever, but that market is going to react to you differently the next time that you come around, right? And those fans aren't going to have that experience of like being at the first show in their city and it's like this buzzing, incredible thing, right? That can feel like a little bit exciting, a little bit aspirational, has a little bit of that energy behind it. But at the same time, there are ways that if you, and I sound like almost like you need to reverse engineer your artistic process. Let me start by saying, and I'm sure that as someone who runs Fader Label and works hand in hand with some very adventurous artists yourself, it starts with create the best art that you can, of course. But with that said, if you can find collaborators that you could do a single with, right? And it lives on both of your Spotify pages or both of your title pages, or you can do collaborative posts to promote it in a market that you want to tour in. maybe pay more attention to that because you're trying to expand from New York to the Northeast to trying to get to New York in a way that's not going to put you into a ton of debt. Because it's never been more expensive to tour. We're still in the middle of that sort of post-pandemic logjam where everyone is trying to catch up for lost time, so to speak. And it's created, along with so many of the macroeconomic stuff that we don't have the time to get into right now. But, those same sort of challenges that artists are having on that sort of initial hockey stick of growth is something that we talk a lot about within my team, which is how can artists get access to the resources that they need to take advantage of lightning when it strikes, right? And one thing that we've spent a lot of time thinking about is how can artists better understand their finances so that they're making informed decisions about what they can and can't afford in terms of taking some, because you have to take some risks. You have to put yourself out there. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying you have to be totally conservative, but also how can we accelerate the process of getting the revenue that artists are generating and getting that money into their hands as it's earned so that artists can take advantage of that success and build from strength to strength in a way where they have agency and their own sort of their own control over how they want to put together their career if they're having that early success. But you're working with a roster that has developing artists, that has artists who are sort of on the upper lines of festivals and globally touring with a lot of awareness around those shows. How are you guys thinking about it as a label? And maybe as a follow-up to that, how are you thinking about tours as promotional sort of exercises for the releases now versus, and I'm sure that there's a big difference between now and let's say when you were even doing those early Matt and Kim records back when I was on the team and helping to get blog posts and things like that on Daylight and some of those early hits.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt and Kim is a great case study. They're 16 years into their career, 17 years into their career. They still make a ton of money on the road. They've really built an amazing business, and people felt, now they can sell out 2-3 nights at a Brooklyn Steel in New York or big venues, but people failed to realize they were grinding it out, sleeping in people's basements on the road. They were playing small 50 to 100 person shows, driving in a van all over the country and really just grinding it out. And I think, that's the mentality that artists have to have in order to come through and really see that success. And some artists don't have the patience. A lot of artists, don't have the patience. They don't have the ability to lose the money it's going to take to do that, which I don't take for granted by any means. It's like, the economics of touring right now are so hard. So with our acts, we highly encourage them to get on the road. When we can, we will help supplement some touring to a degree within reason. We will help look for some outside resources, to offset some of those losses. But a lot of acts have had to endure a couple of years of serious losses. So if we sign a label to sign an artist to a publishing deal, or we're able to get a corporate play, all of that money goes back into building that touring base. And usually it takes, 2 or 3 tours to really get to the break-even point. And, our best artists endured years of losses, and invested a lot of their own money and a lot of money that a lot of artists would make and just put in their own pockets. And it's those people that are willing to do that have really succeeded. And it's hard. We have an artist, Chloe George, incredible songwriter, beautiful voice. She's about to do her first big tour. We've done a bunch of good one-off shows with her, but she's about to go out with Arlo Parks, and Arlo loves her music, gave her a shot, and she's about to go on the entire Arlo Parks tour starting at the end of January, February next year. And we have to set it up that she's going to lose money playing these shows, but we look at that as the same investment and maybe a more important investment as making a music video or doing photo shoots. And I think artists have to prioritize where they're putting their dollars. And you can't look at losing money as a tour as, oh, this is going to kill me. But because you're going to lose money and come out of pocket when you spend money to do creative or do some other things or make a higher end level of recording, You just have to think about what are the priorities of where you're going to allocate your resources. And I would say for us, we always want our artists to prioritize touring and playing live. But that said, you know,
can I just add one thing before we move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I think another thing that artists can do without breaking the bank is to really think about the world building element of their creative, not just in terms of how they're presenting videos and their album art, all that stuff, but with the live shows as well. And whether it is just sort of hammering that point home with a residency in your hometown where it's not as expensive, you live there, you can, make a little bit of money, at that home base, but really establishing like what is the energy of your show, what is the world that you're presenting to invite your fans into, and especially with social media and all that stuff, how can you get that shared out there so there's a sense of anticipation about your show, right? Like what like one of the best live bands I saw this year is Model Actress, which is a True Panther band. I saw them at South by and they just blew my face off. But that's a band where they were hammering that point home in New York. Or I even think back to like the Cantora days of some of the showcases we would put together, or the sort of vision that someone like a Francis Starlight had with Francis and the Lights live show, where there was a concept behind it. There was a buzz around it because you would walk in and the whole thing was curated and it felt so clearly a vision that he had invited you into. Or the first time that I really knew that MGMT was going to pop is when they played the Jelly Pool Party at McCarran Park, because everyone in this giant line were dressed up like they were in their music video, right? They had created this energy that people were swept up in and felt like they wanted to participate in. They didn't just want to observe it and go and check a box. I went and saw that band that I like, but it was like there was something more to explore and something to interact with, which is something that if you can develop a little bit of that energy, that I think can help sort of open up some doors in terms of how you can start to build that live business in a way that doesn't take a big budget, other than your creativity and the effort you put into it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one more point on the live side before we move on to some other topics. I would say the most important thing is not to worry about can you tour nationally, can you tour globally. Focus on the market that you're in. Artists sometimes think, oh, I can't do this, like own the city where you are living and making your market and be the biggest act you can be within that small region before you worry about taking on the world, because that's all there. And I think that's really important. It's if you're New York based, how can you start playing all the boroughs? How can you build a small following that starts with 25 friends and then becomes 100 fans, and then next thing you know it's 750 people. So live is,
and for the first 5 years, always play your best song at every single show. So many bands have said to me, I said, why didn't you play that song? It's an incredible song. Oh, people are sick of that song. No, they're not. 50% of the people in the room tonight didn't know you existed before they got here. Play that one every time.
so true. But we'll get to any questions you guys have in a bit on the live side. But Will, I want to shift gears to entrepreneurship, because that was one of the things, like I said earlier, that stuck out about you. And you've always been a serial entrepreneur. You've always had this energy about wanting to start your own businesses. I was so impressed with what you built with Cantora. I mean, look at the success of MGMT and what you did on the label side. Look at the fact that you built this great startup concept, to help on the revenue side of streaming with artists, and now you're part of a much bigger tech platform. Where does that come from? Like, and what is the way to jumpstart your own business, and what drives you to make a lot of those decisions to start businesses the way you have over your career?
Yeah, well, it sounds like it was like a deliberate plan, right? I feel like for some people, there's a motor or some sort of drive to just be curious, and when there are opportunities to put things together, I think in a lot of elements of my life, even outside of business, like I'm just a very active participant in the things that I choose to spend time on. Like, I'm always making the plans and putting pieces together, and that's just the way that I find to get the most out of things that are worth the effort. But I think that a number of things come to mind. One is the fact that timing plays a role in it, being aware of what's happening in the industry that you're interested or passionate about. The fact that we were able to start a record label literally at the exact same time that TuneCore was introduced into the market. And Jeff Price, who's the founder of TuneCore, was speaking at a class at NYU, and we literally just like signed up. And just like that, we had the same distribution reach as Sony or Universal or your old colleagues at Columbia or whatever it might be, Warner. The hard part was just making anyone care, right? Because suddenly the store had, went from this many flavors to an infinite selection of musical choices that you could make. So that really allowed us to get a foot in the door as a label that wouldn't have been possible without a lot more resources. And could we have gone down that path if it was 2 or 3 years earlier and printed up, CDs and gotten distribution, which is something we ended up doing down the line? Maybe. But it was that curiosity and putting myself in situations where I could learn as much as possible and ask questions and be, again, an active participant in the culture. I decided to go to school in New York, and I had the privilege of being able to experiment while I was in school and didn't have a ton of financial responsibilities. And that put me in a position where in New York at that time, the combination of distribution, combination of finding the right partners, combination of being in a city that was just exploding with creative energy, and areas nearby like Wesleyan University, where we worked with Bare Hands and the MGMT guys and Francis, and like people just thought we went to Wesleyan for a while. But it was a combination of understanding like how those things were going to come together, being able to, in good faith with a straight face, talk to people that you want to do business with and say, hey, I know I don't have the most experience, but let me find ways to build trust with you, whether it was, again, doing concerts or starting small, starting with a single, and then building that into an album, which is something that happened with a ton of different acts that we worked with. And that's something that we still do today, even with our current team, is what are the ways that we can collaborate on an event series or some programming elements, or, oh, are you going to be at Music Biz? Or are you going to be at South by? Let's co-host something. And it's lightweight, but it sends a powerful signal to the market, which is these people respect each other. These people are trying to bring together a community together, or an audience, or a group of people to talk about how to make, the music business work better for creators, which is what we're all about. So it's that same ethos of how can you start with manageable things, follow through, prove it, right? Show, don't tell your value. And then from there, trying to evaluate the right opportunities and having a thick skin so that when you're rejected over and over and over again for different ideas, that you stick with it and don't let that throw you off course. Because, I think that over the past like 15 or so years, there's been a glamorization of entrepreneurship as like, in a lot of ways, like tech entrepreneurs are like celebrities in a way that seems kind of, just not odd, but it's just like something that has evolved over time. But, the roller coaster and the highs and lows, and I've had a lot of success. I've also had, I've also endured a lot of things that failed and didn't work. But, those are the things that you have to really face up to and look at and examine, as painful as that might be, because that's how you learn and how you grow. And it sounds like cliched and, obvious, but, for a lot of people, working in a bigger team and having like a playbook is a great way to build a career. There's no one right way to do it, but those are some of the things that, I was looking at it as, I was trying to fumble my way through the early stages of building a career. And I'm lucky that a lot of the people that I worked with early on, there was like the Mark Cates and Dave Gottliebs who manage MGMT, who, gave me some lessons about just how to get buy-in from a team and how to navigate these waters, because it's not an industry that you need a specific degree. Even though I went to the music business program at NYU, you don't need any sort of credentials to get involved. You just need to, follow through, build those relationships, and keep building from there. But I have the same question for you, but also I've always been curious, like, how did you and Rob end up as co-CEOs? It's such a unique thing. I don't know any other companies that come to mind where it's like, not, okay, those are the co-founders and the CEO and the whatever else, but like from the jump, it seems like for almost 30 years now, you guys have been co-CEOs together on so many different endeavors. what was the inspiration for that, and what does it say about your partnership with Rob and sort of how that's been able to endure?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we grew up together. Like I said earlier, we were best friends from the time we met in seventh grade. We discovered hip hop together. I mean, we were there together. I remember sitting in his car hearing Run DMC for the first time. I remember hearing so many great iconic pieces of music together, whether it's U2 or LL Cool J or Tribe Called Quest. And so there was always this friendship built on our love of sports and music. And when I got started at SBK, Rob was looking for what he was going to do, and was able to introduce him to some people at the same place. We started at the same label together, so we commiserated and learned everything together. And then as we became successful there, we both broke out and went to two of the most iconic labels in the industry. Rob went to work for Clive Davis at Arista. I worked at Columbia. And both of us, we have parents that are entrepreneurial and very hardworking. And we came from a background that we always talked, even when we were working together, about doing something entrepreneurial. We were always the guys, like every employee, that has criticism of who they work for and want to change things. And there are two types of people. There are the people that go out and do something about it and put themselves in a position where they can control those things that frustrate them. Or there are people that continue to work their way up and continue to complain about what they don't like, and either try to inspire change where they work or just complain their whole career. And our vision always together was to go out and start our own thing so we can be in the space that we wanted to be in and have full control. Obviously, what we built evolved in so many different ways, but we've had an amazing partnership, and partnership with friends is hard. It's challenging. In one end, it's been incredible because there's no one that I feel more loyal to, and vice versa. I know he has my back, I have his back. We also come from different areas of music that we're in love with. Rob is just a hip hop expert and has such incredible relationships. He toured with, Biggie when nobody knew who the Notorious B.I.G. was, and I was on the road with Blur when nobody who knew this iconic British band that would go on to become Gorillaz. So we brought those two backgrounds to our partnership, and then when we became co-CEOs, we each oversaw different disciplines. I built Fader Fort, and was very focused on a lot of the creative and strategic side and the agency side. He was very passionate about film and hip hop. He started our mixtape. So as co-CEOs, we were able to pick disciplines that we both had passion for, and it's worked really well. And then there are times when it's tricky, when you both have different visions. Partnership is hard, where you have different visions for how you want to take the company in direction. But I think very few great partnerships, last the level of what we've done at the success level we've had. So we're very proud of what we've built together. In terms of the roller coaster that you're referring to, entrepreneurship is crazy. I mean, it is so many ups and downs and so many challenges. People don't realize how hard it is to start and build something and sustain it. And the bigger you become and more successful you become, the more challenging it becomes. And when I look back at the roller coaster, the thing I am most proud about, everyone's like, what do you love the most? I get that question a lot. And it's not, the successes and seeing Drake at the peak of his career playing Fader Fort, or, getting to watch Claro, headline Reading at this pinnacle moment, or being on the road with Del Water Gap and watching, those are all incredible and so rewarding, and a big part of what I love in the success. But when I look back, the one thing that I am most proud of is the legacy of young people that we mentored and shaped and what they're doing in the industry, you being one of them. But the family tree that we've built around our company is really what I'm the most proud of. And that's the hardest part of entrepreneurship, is building a great team, creating this cohesion, because that's what makes you successful. And that part, as I get older, as COVID comes, that part has gotten more challenging than ever before. But if I think back at the one thing, when we talk about the roller coaster, I love all the successes. I'm proud of every artist we work with and all the Fader successes and the accolades, but it's the people that I point to. And I think when you think of entrepreneurship, it's not just succeeding on the business part of what you're doing. It's the way you inspire and build the team and the community around the company you're building. And I think if you were to go out and ask people around about Cornerstone and Fader, we have this incredible loyal family and some of the best friendships. People got married and had kids from our team, and some of the best friendships. And then I look at the success on so many levels in so many different areas of our team and how tight they still all are. And that makes me so proud. And that's something that I hope, that's the legacy I want to take away from what we've built. And that's an important lesson to me in entrepreneurship. And it's hard. It's really hard when you are running a company, building a company. People are very focused on what their needs are and what their role is. And sometimes you don't realize how many other aspects there are to that company. There's payroll and insurance and people's personal issues that you have to be there to help them through. And it's, the work and the clients and the challenges and the world events that happen, whether it's September 11th or COVID. I mean, it's this constant roller coaster of obstacles, and you are being thrown tons of curveballs and you're ducking and fixing things. And every time you have a success, then there's another problem around the corner. And I think as you're an entrepreneur, it's about endurance. People ask me, like, what are the most important things? And it's having endurance, having the ability to take the punches and keep coming back. And I think that's something that we've done really well over the years. And it's a testament to us to remain independent. That's the other thing. Sometimes you need outside help, and somehow we've been so stubbornly independent, oftentimes for our benefit, sometimes, at our demise. During COVID, I wish we had a deep pocket corporate partner behind us, but we made it through and we endured. And I think entrepreneurship is tough. It's brutal, but it's beautiful. And I wouldn't want to do it any other way. And I think, the one thing I would say to all of you, whether you're working in corporate jobs or you're an artist, I think you're an entrepreneur no matter what you decide to do. You can be working for a major label or a major corporation and still take that job with an entrepreneurial spirit. And whether you break out on your own and do something, it's okay. But I think having that mentality and learning that mentality is going to benefit you. So yeah, I would say it's hard as hell. It's rewarding. It's something everyone should always think about. And yeah, it's something that we're really proud about. But the thing I think back, Will, it's mentorship. And I love the fact that, got to see you as an employee and someone that, had to manage and coach. And now I see you doing the same thing. And how do you like being in that position? How do you like the roles reversing? And, you seem very good at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I want to invest more energy and time into, honestly. And I think that especially as we're entering this sort of hybrid world where, we're having this conversation on the internet. I have a lot of meetings, obviously through Google and Zoom and everything else, like everybody else, but also the reemergence over the last year of in-person serendipity and meetings and having, that zero latency energy of being in person with someone, to be able to chop it up for maybe a meal or going out to a show or whatever it might be. And it's something that, I think trying to figure out the right balance for those things is something that I'm thinking a lot about as a goal for next year. And how can you offer that sort of, that sort of support and that perspective and those inroads to folks when, they don't want to feel like they're blowing up your inbox, you know what I mean? So I'm certainly looking to be a bit more proactive. I've certainly looked at ways that, whether it is, going and speaking on college campuses or whatever it might be, like, and really doing my best to keep up with folks as I see them, posting their successes and their, their projects on socials and things like that. But it's something that I think in this day and age is like a little bit tricky to figure out how to cultivate the right environment where that sort of ongoing mentorship can be fruitful and can be be not just valuable in one direction, but in both, because both of us are in positions where we're curious about what's happening in culture. Culture always is driven by the youth, and I'm curious as you know, I have an almost 18-month-old daughter. She doesn't have tastes yet other than Itsy Bitsy Spider and the sun, you know, that sort of thing, which is going to throw off all of my raps for next year. But how are you, as we all age and get older and get a little dustier and hopefully a little wiser, how are you keeping tabs on what's happening in like youth culture? Do you lean on your kids who I think are college age for recommendations? Do you bounce ideas off of them for like sort of a gut check of, is this cool? Is this lame?
Yeah.
Like how are you keeping tabs on those things? As
Great,
again, like of course
great
you can
question.
like scroll through TikTok or whatever it is, but that's not the same as like having the real connections.
Yeah, great question. I mean, number one, Will, I am so old and dusty that my kids are well beyond college. So I appreciate you
Oh,
thinking.
well beyond. Okay, cool.
But they, it definitely starts with them. My own kids are such good critics and great filters for me. They are very quick to point out, a lot of things, and it's very helpful. I mean, having kids that love music and are passionate will go to shows with me and festivals and growing up around it and have very strong opinions and aren't afraid to, telling me, what I should hear. It's really helpful. So that's number one. But number two, the biggest reason why I think I've personally stayed relevant and the company has is not having the ego to make all those decisions yourself. I remember reading something about David Geffen, the legendary music executive and multi-billionaire entrepreneur. And one of the things he said was he realized when he was in his mid-30s, he's like, I can't make all these A&R decisions. I need to lose the ego and let go of that control and empower the people that are there. And that always was a guiding principle for me all the years we were building the company. Like when we first started, Rob and I were in our mid to late 20s. It was easy. We were in it. We lived it. But as we got older, it was all about empowering the next generation of people that were running our company. And to our benefit and our blessing, we had incredible people. We had the most amazing, really diverse, interesting staff, people that grew up in all over the world, and we empowered them. And one of the keys to my success, even now, it's listening and empowering and encouraging good young people, and you find your sources. I am a culture junkie. I go out a lot. I see tons of shows. I go to all the festivals with our artists. Like most people my age, they want to sit on the couch and watch whatever shows they're watching.
Yeah, you don't just go to the show, John. You're the last one at the venue.
That's true. I'm the last to
You're
leave.
there with a broom, sweeping up, making sure they can open the
And
open doors the next day.
I'm lucky I get to do that, and it's a blessing, and it's I have the energy to do it, and I want to do it. That's the difference. Like some people don't want to do it, and they get to a point in their career like, I'm going to let the young kids do that. I want to be in the room, and I'm not trying to compete with anyone. I enjoy it, and I enjoy being on the road with our acts. I enjoy going to all the festivals because I want to see with my own eyes what's happening, and it enables me to tell our clients on the agency side, whether it's Coca-Cola or Major League Soccer as they're making decisions, or talk to our artists who are in their early 20s, just starting their career. And I can talk firsthand about what I see with my own eyes. And, it's listening to the people around me, and they keep me in the know. I love when they tell me how old and lame this shit is. They're like, oh, I don't want to hear about the replacements anymore. Like I love hearing that, but I also like the ability to make sure that they do their work too, and that they're digging in and listening, and they have a frame of reference, and they know history of music just as much as they know what's going on in the moment. And yeah, TikTok is a great, useful tool. I still read every major music site and every publication I can get my hands on. I watch a lot of content. In an internet world, there's a lot at your disposal. You have to find a mix of trusted sources that can keep you in the know that way, but there's no substitute. Similar to the way we started the conversation about live music, there's no substitute for being out there. And you have to travel, you have to be in markets, you got to spend time in, whether it's in Nashville or LA or London or the cities, because that's where you're going to see the culture. I still go to record stores, I go to shows, I still really try to immerse myself in what's going on out there. And I think that is really, in our business, no matter what field you're in, it's really important. Yeah. And Tom said it, you got to do the work and you got to put the time in. And if you don't, or you don't have the energy to do it, then you need to surround yourself with people that you're going to empower to do it. But I think if you're going to be in this business and be effective, you still got to be deep in the mix and have passion for it. Otherwise, you should start thinking about doing something else. But talk
Hell yeah.
about you. I mean, what, when we talk about brand building, how do you apply culture to what you do? Because you've made the transition from really doing a lot of marketing in your career now to providing a lot of tools and support. So are you talking to a lot of artists to get their take? Like as you built Hi-Fi and your new role right now, building that out for Block and Title, how do you get your information?
Yeah, great question. I'll also just mention that we only have a few more minutes. So in the chat, thank you for all of the great commentary along the way. It's been fun to keep tabs on that. If you have specific questions, now's the time to ask, because we're gonna break right around 3. But yeah, great question. A big part of the ethos of building the financial tools through Hi-Fi was to build a community around those tools and services. So we were doing everything from hosting mixers and dinners to not only get to know the folks that are using our services, but also to hear directly from them how we could best serve them. And we're certainly bringing that same approach in terms of community building and making sure that the music industry is screwed up enough. We don't have to invent any problems, right? Especially on the financial side, the real challenges are deep rooted enough and we know what they are. But in terms of how they express themselves in different ways to different artists at different points in their career, we're always using direct input. And it has been a thrill to see what our colleagues at Tidal have built with Tidal Artist Home, which is really the hub that artists can go to grow their careers, including their collabs feature, where there are a ton of artists that are finding recommended collaborators within Tidal. And it's incredible. It'll be incredible to see what those artists who probably didn't even know that each other existed, create new art out of that. And we're taking all of that and making sure that we aren't losing sight of the fact that finance is one of the most personal things in your life, and the fact that we have to really continue to earn the trust of the artist community, which is rightfully so, like continuously in a defensive stance, especially when it comes to anything involving their finances and their money. We also need to understand the habits of artists and how they operate in 2024 and beyond, because we need to slide in seamlessly in a way that doesn't feel like homework, that doesn't feel like a whole extra set of tasks, where artists right now are trying to shed tasks in terms of having to post a gazillion videos of themselves on the internet, on socials, having to continuously do all of this stuff and just get back to creating the most inspired art that they can. That from the beginning has been our mission. How can we create more of that bandwidth? How can we create more energy? How can we take the weight of the financial side of it and that side of your career and free up that space so that you can have more time and energy and more resources to apply to those projects? That's why we're doing what we're doing. But I think that, in order to do that in the best way and to have the biggest impact, it has to slide in alongside the rest of the habits of how artists are collaborating, where their money is coming from, how their teams are evolving. And as there's more and more optionality in terms of how artists can put together bespoke teams on different projects, it doesn't get simpler for them. And, that the onus is on us to be aware of that, to learn what is working for artists, what's on the bleeding edge. It's a big reason why programming and education and bringing in experts to talk about anything from how to make sure you're not leaving money on the table, different parts of your career, how to break into the Chinese market on social media platforms that have hundreds of millions of daily users that you don't even know exist and don't know how to understand if you have fans there, sort of niche topics, broader topics, making sure that we're just sort of continuing to beat the drum about financial empowerment for artists so they know they can come to us for that side of that career. And the fact that our team is full of folks who have come from operational backgrounds and have been through the fires of, running independent labels or working with management teams, working at talent agencies. All those things help because, we can look artists, in the eye and let them know, like, we aren't just coming from the technical side. We've got best in class engineers and product folks to make all that stuff come to life. But all of it comes from a deeply understood passion for why this stuff matters to artists to begin with.
Great. Awesome. Well, anybody out there have questions? We really appreciate everybody's time. And
yeah, and before, if folks have to jump to a 3, make sure that you join for the last session. And Tom, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder for the sign off, but Andrew Bergman, Vicky Nauman, next Thursday, this same time, that's going to be a fascinating conversation as well. But yeah, Tom, I see you're back. I'll kick it back to you.
No pressure on Andrew and Vicky next week, but it's going to be hard to top today, boys. Will, I just want to thank you so much for bringing John to this party. To the audience, I promised you at the outset that you would leave more inspired than you arrived, and I'm certain that we delivered on that promise. You guys are both incredible, and it's no wonder how hard you've worked and how you've invested in other people. Great learnings here for any entrepreneurs, for any artists, and it's no wonder you guys have been as successful as you have.
Thanks, Tom.
As said, please come next week. It's our final show of the year, but we'll be right back here in January as well. In the meantime, be nice to each other. That's really important. With that, I will say goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having
again.
us.
This was great. Thanks, John. Thanks, Tom. Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Will.